Hi, my name's Stuart Lynch, and in this video, I'm excited to give you a hands-on tour of the most significant changes and new features in Xcode 26, whether you're running the latest macOS 26 or if you're still on macOS 15. We'll dive into the revamped start page, a completely redesigned settings interface inspired by iPad, and we'll explore the game-changing playground macro that lets you test code instantly without leaving your project. Plus, I'll walk you through the new Icon Composer integration, making custom app icons easier than ever, even if you're supporting older iOS versions. So stick around to see exactly what's new, what's moved, and how you can adapt your workflow for the best experiences with Apple's flagship developer tool. So let's take a look at what Xcode 26 has to offer, regardless of whether you've updated to macOS 26 or still on macOS 15. In a subsequent video, I'll be showing what Xcode has to offer once you have upgraded to macOS 26. In Xcode 16, if you opened a project and had no tabs open, you can locate a file that you want in the navigation pane and click on it, or you can use Command-Shift-O to open and locate the file that you want to open in a new editor. In Xcode 26, however, when no tabs are open, you now get a Start Page option that replaces the Open Quickly search, but also lists all of the most recent open files. Now, once a tab has been opened, there's no obvious way to remove that tab, as there is in the previous versions of Xcode. Command-Shift-O still works, but a better alternative might be just to use Command-T, which will create a new tab using the new Start Page. So let's try that again. If you do not click on anything, you can go back and remove the original tab, and then just leave the start page, if that's what you want. If you're using Xcode, you want to make sure that you know where to find your settings and how to change things to make sure that they work the way that you want. This year in Xcode 26, the settings screens have been changed to that much discussed and much maligned iPad type view. Now this is evident as soon as you open the settings. Here's a comparison between Xcode 26 and Xcode 16. All the tabs are there, but the tabs are in the sidebar rather than along the top, as we were familiar with. Some things have moved and some things have changed. So let me show you what I have discovered and what to look for if things aren't behaving the way that you want them or expect them. On the General tab in Xcode 26, the Appearance and Navigation and Files options have been moved right up to the top, where Issues and Test Parallelization have moved below. This makes sense, and this is likely where you're going to be making any significant changes anyway. The Accounts tab has been renamed Apple Accounts, and you only have the ability to add your Apple account here. In earlier versions of Xcode, you could also add your source control account like GitHub here, but it's been moved, as you will see. Behaviors is a bit of a pain now. Instead of seeing everything all in one screen, you have to drill down on each section to make any changes and see your current settings. This is a regression, in my opinion. The Navigation tab has some changes that you should be paying attention to, particularly on the Click on Code and Navigation options. These have changed. Let me show you by way of example in this project. First, in previous versions of Xcode, if you click on a file in the navigation pane, you'd create an editor and set the focus if none existed. Or you would replace the existing focused unpinned tab unless you edit it, in which case it would stay pinned and the next selection would create a new temporary editor. Well, you could also pin tabs by double-clicking on them, and the next click in the navigation pane would create a new tab. In Xcode 26, that behavior's changed. First, make sure that you have the Show Edit tab bar enabled from the View menu. By default, if no tab is opened and all you see is the Start page, tapping on a file in the navigation pane will create a new tab replacing the Start page. And clicking on subsequent files will now always replace the Focused Editor tab even if you edit it. It doesn't pin it on editing. If you hover over a tab, you can pin it by either clicking on the pin or by double-clicking. After that, a new click will create a new focused unpinned editor pane or tab. If you have a pin tab, clicking on a new file will always replace the first unpinned tab available, even if you have the pinned tab editor in focus. The key that I like to use a lot in Xcode 16 if there is only one tab open is option clicking, which would open a new one to the right. Thereafter, using option click would replace the unfocused tab with the one that you just clicked on. If you only had one tab open, it would open a new one. And if you option clicked, it would open the file in the other editor. Similarly, if I held down the option and shift keys down, I could choose the destination where I wanted to place a new editor. In Xcode 26, this has changed. Option clicking will always create a new unpinned tab and set the focus to that tab editor. The old option click behavior has been replaced with a shift option, so this may be confusing to you. By default, there is no default configuration that will allow you to have the destination chooser. The good news is that you can remap the behavior of those old navigation clicks if that's what you're used to. If your fingers are used to the old behavior, I recommend that you do the remapping of the keys so that you don't get confused. There is a new notifications tab in Xcode 26, so if you want Xcode to send you notifications, whatever they may be, you can configure that permission. The Themes tab no longer lists your themes along the left pane. Instead, now you have to choose it from a picker to choose the theme that you want to edit. The Text Editing tab is renamed as Editing, and the Display, Editing, and Indentation tabs have been moved to a vertical list of navigation links. The previous Editing tab has been renamed as Completion, and here's where you can find that pesky code prediction option, which I have chosen to disable. The Indent when typing section, which I have enabled, has this strange info button, and it's here where you get to choose which of the syntax-aware indenting you want enabled. The Key Bindings tab has been renamed as Shortcuts, and it's the source control section where you now find your GitHub, Bitbucket, or other source control account. The previous Git tab has been replaced with this navigation link. The components is pretty much the same, as is the locations, but it's all now in a single view as the previous Custom Paths tab has been moved to this single pane. Now, for those of you who have moved on to macOS 26 and have it installed, you're also going to find an Intelligence tab, but more of that in the next video. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to the video and ring that bell to get notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. A fantastic new addition to Xcode this year is the Playground macro, and you can use that right now in macOS 15. With the Playgrounds macro, you no longer need to create a separate Playground project to test your code. If you're a follower of my channel, you'll know that I often create a Playground to test out things like creating parsing functions or testing an API decoding to make sure that they're all working before I implement them in my code. Well, now you can do that directly in your current Xcode project, and there's no need to leave it. For example, here's the beginning of a project that I'm creating to test out the Platzi Fake Store API. It's a great site that was introduced to me by Mohammed Azam, another great SwiftUI content creator. So if you haven't already, I recommend that you check out Azam Sharp. Anyway, this site has a nice store-based API. And you can view the documentation and see that it has a REST API and there are a number of different endpoints. For example, here is the categories endpoint, and you get an array of these categories that are contained within the store. And even though it specifies here that this is the response for the JSON, if I copy this URL and paste it into my web browser, I see that there are also two date properties. Similarly, there is a products endpoint, And you can see that it has a number of properties, including an array of category. Yet, again, if I use this URL and paste them into a web browser, I can see from the response that it also includes 2 date keys for the product. Well, both these dates in the product and the category are dates that are in the ISO 8601 format. Now, I want to test out fetching and decoding these 2 endpoints for my app before I actually start to design and build it. So in the starter project for this part of the tutorial, and I'll leave a link in the description, I have both the starter project and the completed source code branches there. You'll see that I have included a models file for the 2 endpoints, and I've also included the endpoint URLs for each. And I've also included an API service class that, if you watch my videos, you might be familiar with. I use it all the time, and that's where I can pass in an endpoint and have it return the decoded JSON for the codable structs. It also allows me to specify a date decoding strategy or a key decoding strategy as well. And this is what I use all the time. So I just dragged it in to my project folder here. So what do? Well, in my file here, where you have Xcode, you can import playgrounds and have access to the playground macro. So for example, right here in my content view, just let me import playground. And then I can use the playground macro that will allow me to enter a block of code, like just a print statement to print hello. And this will add a new preview tab, but both of them are named content view. But the one with the Flask SF symbol is the playground, while the one with the I is your preview for your content view itself. I suggest that you name the playground, which you can do, to make it easier to locate. And within that block of code, you can do anything you like. For example, you can take a closed range of integers, like 1 through 10. And then for each of those, you can get an iterator that you can call number and print out that number. That code executes right away in your preview, and it may seem a little confusing because it doesn't look like we're getting that list of integers. But you can select the value history here to see the entire list. So let's get a little more practical for our particular project. I'm not a big fan of including a playground preview right within the view file. So what I like to do is to create a folder for my playgrounds. Then inside that folder, I can create any number of Swift files. And the purpose of these files is to create playgrounds within each one of them so that I can explore, in this case, the Platzi API. So I'm going to call this first playground the API testing playground. Now I can import playgrounds. So the first API I want to explore is the categories API. So I'm going to create a playground, a named one for that one. And I'll just call it categories. Then I'm going to use my API service class for that. But I'm going to need the endpoint URL. And remember, I have that comment in my models page. So let me just go and copy it. So first I create an instance of the API service class, and I'll pass in that URL. Now, since the getJSON function that I have in that API service is an asynchronous function, within the playground code block here, I can create a task unit of work. And then we can get our categories by defining a constant called categories as an array of category. And then we can try and await the result of calling the API service getJSON function, but also provide the optional date decoding strategy of ISO 8601. But we can do a for category in category loop and print out the category name. And then in the preview, we can expand any one of our categories to see the object. and we can view all of the values for the name as well. Great. The API looks good for categories. And now within this same page, I'm going to create another playground page. I'm just going to copy the other one, and I'm going to call it products. So all I have to do to create that second tab in my preview pane is to change categories to products and make sure that I also go to the correct URL. And then I can iterate through each of the products and print the product description. Now I have two tabs, and I can go to the Products Playground tab, and I can expand on any one of the full products. And I can now view also the product descriptions for all of them. This is fantastic. And the last thing I want to cover in this video that's new in Xcode 26 is the ability to use app icons created with the new Icon Composer app. I will be creating a new video on this topic, and it'll come right after the second video in the What's New in Xcode series. So watch for it. But let me show you how it works right now. But remember, much more detail will be coming. So I can create a brand new project with Xcode 26. You can see here that I'm using Xcode Beta 3. And I'm just going to call it Sample Project. The only thing that I'm interested right now in is the asset catalog, where the app icon asset is located currently. As you can see, it's currently empty. Now, on my desktop, I have a sample app icon, which I created using Icon Composer. And you can see that you'll learn when I create the video that it generates the different rendering versions for us for our design. Now, once you have this, all you have to do is to drag this file into your project folder in Xcode. And it makes a copy, which means it's now the copy part of your Xcode project. So the original file can actually be deleted. And in Xcode, if I tap on it, it shows me the new glass look. And there's even a button here that will, if clicked on, open directly Icon Composer, where you can edit it within Xcode, sort of. Now, in order to use this icon, though, we'll need to make sure that we have the icon name without the icon extension. So let me copy it. Now, I can select my target, and in the General tab and the App Icons and Launch Screen section, I'm going to replace that app icon string with that copied string. And also, make sure you exit the field, though, before you start building. Now let me select the iPhone 16 Pro running Xcode 26, and I'm going to build and run. If I exit to the home screen, I can see that my app has my new icon. If I do a Command-Shift-A to go into dark mode, I see I get the dark mode version. If I long press, I can choose to customize my home screen. And I can see here that it's set to auto right now. That's why it went right into the dark mode. But I'm going to switch to Tinted. And I can change tints for my icons. And you can see the new one adjusts perfectly in both light and dark modes. Well, what if your app supports OSs prior to iOS 26? Well, this new format is backwards compatible. For example, I know I have iOS 18.5 simulators installed. So I'm going to change the minimum deployment target here to 18.5. And when I do this, you can see that I have now more devices to choose from. So let me choose an iPhone 16 Pro running iOS 18.5. After running, I can return to the desktop, and I can see that the icon here is the same one. Great. Let me do a Command-Shift-A. Again, the dark mode version works here too. Let me long press and edit to customize my home screen. I can switch to Tinted, and you can see how it adjusts. But as you can see, this is much nicer in iOS 26. Anyway, the other mode I forgot to tell you about on iOS 26 is the new Clear mode. So let me go back and check that out. That's pretty nice if you like that effect. Now, all of what I've shown you can be done right now in Xcode 26, whether you're still running macOS 15, as I am doing here, or if you've updated to macOS 26. In the next video in this series that'll come next week, we're going to jump into the intelligence and code assist features available to you if you are on macOS 26. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. You can subscribe to my channel to get notifications of new videos. And remember that you can also download my YouTube channel listing app for free and quick access to all of my 350 plus YouTube videos. A link's in the description. And also remember I have a full SwiftUI course available on my Teachable site where you learn how to build a fun multi-targeted app.